Chapter 7, an overview of the underlying media theories and the basic terms and calculations necessary to drive efficient and effective connections plans. We're going to look at basic definitions of media, medium, and vehicle, terms related to audience ratings, terms related to audience measurement, and terms related to efficiency. Media is the main means of mass communication regarded collectively. Medium is the singular form of media, and the vehicle is the specific program, magazine, or website, etc. Impressions are important because they are the most basic metric in audience measurement. How many people had the opportunity to see your ad? Is it just a count of the number of times the ad was exposed to? How many people? Because of this, impressions tend to be a very large number. If you see an ad 10 times, that is 10 impressions. If your friend sees it 15 times, that's 25 impressions. With 116 million TV households in the US, you can imagine impressions add up pretty quickly. And here is a dirty little secret. Media people hate numbers. So we don't want to work with tens of millions of impressions. So we have created an entire language to help in categorizing audiences into more digestible pieces. It starts with a rating. A rating is nothing more than a percentage of your target audience that watched a particular program. We're going to use television for simplicity's sake. When you read about television ratings, you want to pay attention to what target audiences they're referring to. Oftentimes, they're just talking about household ratings. There are almost 116 million television households in the US today. But you'll also frequently notice their article may say A 18 to 49 ratings or A 25 to 54 ratings. This is because those are the two most coveted demographics for advertisers. So a 5 household rating represents a different number of people than a 5 A 18 and 19 rating. The HH rating means 5% of the 116 million households we're watching. A 5 A 18 to 49 rating means 5% of the 127 million 18 to 49-year-olds who are watching the program. A rating for a single program represents the reach of the program. But with the exception of Apple's introduction of the Mac computer in the 1984 Super Bowl, I'm not aware of any other ad that ran only once, which means that when you run an ad campaign, you run multiple ratings on many different programs. At the end of an advertising campaign, you can measure how many people saw your ad. This is called your reach. Reach is the basic concept that refers to simply the number of people who had the opportunity to see your ad, at least once. How many people have seen the shot on the iPhone 6 ad? Now, we know that just because we saw an ad once doesn't mean we won't see it again many more times. So measuring audiences is a combination of understanding how many people ever saw the ad and, on average, how many times they saw your ad. But as you learned previously, if I've run many ads on many programs and I've reached a certain number of people on varying number of times, how on earth can we keep it straight? And this is where we get to the GRP. A gross rating point represents the relationship between reach and frequency. Say 75% of my audience saw my ad an average of 4 times. That would equate to 300 gross rating points. For the sake of argument and simplicity, say I only bought television programs that had 5 ratings. That would be I bought 60 spots that delivered a 5 rating to equal 300 GRPs. See, with GRPs, we multiply the reach by 100 to get the whole number. So the reach equals 5% or 0.05 times 100 equals 5. So I can then add rating points that represent the same audience, household, or A 18 to 49. For any given schedule, you'll total all the rating points together to equal a gross rating point. The actual reach and frequency of any given schedule is dependent on viewing patterns. So if you advertise on a lot of highly rated, therefore high-reaching shows, like the schedule you see here, the reach will be higher. You could also get a 33.3 GRP by running a lot more than 5 spots on a number of low-rated shows. That means that those 33 GRPs would deliver higher frequency and a lower reach. There'll be more on that later on when we look at individual media, but for now, just know that the same number of GRPs will equal varying levels of reach and frequency, depending on the schedule that we pick. Composition and coverage help us to understand the makeup of either the vehicle's audience or our target audience's engagement with that vehicle. It's easy to start with coverage and think of it as rating. The coverage number is essentially a rating. It tells you how many people in your target audience are watching a particular program, reading a particular magazine, or on a certain social platform. Of the 146 million Facebook users in the US, 18.1 million, or 12% of them, are between the ages of 18 to 24. So 12% of Facebook users are 18 to 24, which is our coverage. Composition asks the question a slightly different way. Of all 18 to 24-year-olds in the US, 26.7 million, how many of them go on Facebook? The answer is 67%, or 2/3 of all 18 to 24-year-olds are on Facebook. This distinction is important depending on how you want to analyze your media. If you want to reach a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds quickly, Facebook would be a great place because you can reach 2/3 of them on Facebook. But if you're looking to zero in on that demographic and you place an ad on Facebook, you know that 88% of the people who see your ad are not within your target audience. It's important to understand the composition and coverage of the vehicles that you're selecting, but you generally look for a balance between the two, and that enables you to reach your audience more efficiently. It is important to note that reach builds differently in different media. The more people who engage with a given media, the quicker you'll be able to build reach in that medium. Television still builds reach faster than any other media, with radio and internet behind it. What this research curve demonstrates is that as you build reach, frequency builds at a slower rate, but once you reach the point of diminishing returns, you'll find yourself building frequency much faster. This dynamic has driven media planning theories throughout. The two major theories, effective frequency and recency. Effective frequency pledged allegiance to the AIDA model. It assumed that a consumer had to be exposed to an ad at least 3 times before they could be motivated to buy. That meant that when planning out how many GRPs to buy, planners only looked at what % of the people had been exposed at least 3 times to an ad. Anyone who had only been exposed once or twice weren't counted. This meant that you had to buy many more GRPs to achieve your 3+ reach goal. Professor Jones used an extensive analysis of historical advertising and sales trends to prove that the most impactful ad exposure was the one closest to the moment of purchase. What this meant was that those people who we were reaching once or twice were important, and because we didn't know when people might be in the market for any given product, it was important to try to advertise as many weeks throughout the year as possible. So rather than short bursts of advertising that we saw under effective frequency theory, you advertised at lower levels throughout the year in as many weeks as possible with recency theory. So now we've determined how many GRPs we'll plan to buy based on our reach and frequency goals, and we've determined how many weeks in the year we can advertise. The next step is determine how efficiently we will buy. Efficiency is not purely a media concept. Everyone always wants to make sure they're getting a deal. Take your next party, for example. You go to the store to buy beer, and you can either get a 12-pack for $25 or a keg for $30. Which is the better deal? Well, you're going to do an efficiency calculation on that, and you'll determine how much you're paying per ounce for each option. Turns out they're the same price. In fact, the bottles are slightly cheaper, and it looked like you were getting more beer in the draught keg, but the additional cost actually evened it out. You figured that out by dividing the cost of each and the ounces of beer in each, and the media efficiency works the same way. The most basic efficiency metric is the CPM, which refers back to the number of impressions. This allows us to compare media with different characteristics, regardless of the reach or the platforms. We're able to compare apples to apples. Now, impressions doesn't start with M, so what gives? Remember, media people hate numbers. I don't want to be bothered calculating the millions of impressions I'm delivering, so we break it down into thousands. What is the cost to to reach every thousandth person, and M is the Roman numeral for 1,000. Another trick to remember if you don't want to memorize formulas is the word per always means divided by mathematically. So CPM literally means the cost of the ad divided by every thousandth impression. Just drop the 3 zeros at the end of our number. The CPM measurement works well when we all could do was measure audience exposure. Digital ushered in the ability to measure audience engagement, though. Rather than just who did I reach, advertisers can now measure who clicks, what actions and views they take. The calculation is the same, the cost of the ad divided by the number of clicks, actions, or views. So now it's time to look at the different types of media that we have. Let me know if you have any questions.